An article from Vanity Fair has documented several instances where Republican congresspeople have demonstrably kowtowed to public pressure to support Trump-backed initiatives, policies, or confirmations that they would not have otherwise. But it's not just public pressure, it's fear for their lives and safety, and fear for the lives and safety of their families. After receiving death threats and the like from Trump supporters, Republican leaders feel they have no choice but to ardently back Trump. I'm not sure if these revelations are meant to elicit sympathy from the American people for the dangerous plight of congresspeople in the Trump era, but I personally am not so sympathetic, and I will tell you why later. But first, here's the story from the article. Senate and House Republicans know Trump will orchestrate the running of a primary challenger backed by Elon Musk's unlimited resources if a member defies him. But this is not the whole story of Republican subservience to the president. In private, Republicans talk about their fear that Trump might incite his MAGA followers to commit political violence against them if they don't rubber stamp his actions. And there are a few examples of this happening. According to sources, North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis wanted to vote against confirming Pete Hegseth to the position of defense secretary, but the FBI informed him of credible death threats against him, so he ultimately cast the deciding 50th vote to confirm Hegseth. McKay Coppins, biographer to Mitt Romney, said, one Republican congressman confided to Romney that he wanted to vote for Trump's second impeachment, but chose not to out of fear for his family's safety. When one senator, a member of leadership, said he was leaning toward voting to convict, the others urged him to reconsider. You can't do that, Romney recalled someone saying. Think of your personal safety, another said. Think of your children, and the senator eventually decided they were right. Colorado Representative Jason Crow told NBC News following the January 6th insurrection, I had a lot of conversations with my Republican colleagues last night, and a couple of them broke down in tears, saying that they are afraid for their lives if they vote for this impeachment. And former Representative Peter Meijer told The Atlantic that one of his colleagues nearly broke down over fears of violence if he voted to certify the 2020 election results. Meijer said, remember, this wasn't a hypothetical. You were casting a vote after seeing with your own two eyes what some of these people were capable of. If they're willing to come after you inside the U.S. Capitol, what will they do when you're at home with your kids? And to really ensure that Republican and even Democratic congresspeople know that their physical beings are at risk should they break from Trump's agenda, one of the first things that Trump did when he was inaugurated back in January was pardon the January 6th rioters. The message that Trump would not only refuse to call his rabid supporters, but that he would encourage and protect them was heard loud and clear, not just among the American people, but among congressional leaders, many of whom lived through January 6th and then still could not find the words to say that what happened to them was horrifying and traumatic and unacceptable. They were afraid of inciting more violence against them from those same Trump supporters who threatened them in the first place. But in the words of Liz Cheney, a former Republican representative who actually did lose her seat in Congress for speaking out against Trump, the Republicans effing did this to themselves. If you'll recall, during the January 6th riot at the Capitol, Jim Jordan offered to help Liz Cheney, and she was not receptive to his help. She said, he came over to me and basically said, we need to get the ladies away from the aisle. I had watched for the months since the election what was going on and the lies that had been told to people. It was both that I certainly didn't need his help, and secondly, I thought clearly that the lie they had been spreading and telling people had absolutely contributed to what we were living through at that moment. She also said on The Daily, a podcast from the New York Times, I think what House lawmakers certainly shared was an understanding that Donald Trump was responsible. I think you can see that absolutely in many of the public comments. And this goes back to just last month when Trump pardoned the rioters from that day. He pardoned them within just a few days of becoming president, so he wanted everyone to know, in no uncertain terms, that if you commit violence on behalf of Trump, you don't need to worry about anything. He will not only have your back, but he will help you do it, and he will celebrate any violence you commit on his behalf. But Liz Cheney was right. He had made several public comments and he told us exactly how he felt about this type of violent behavior. He said at rallies before that if his supporters punched non-supporters in the face, that he would pay their legal fees. When white supremacists and neo-Nazis were marching in the streets, he refused to publicly condemn their behavior and their beliefs, and he didn't make any effort to distance or distinguish himself and the MAGA movement from their movement. This was all such a long time coming. Back when Trump first started being a somewhat serious politician, as serious a politician as Trump ever was or wanted to be, Republicans started to speak out against him. And then they stopped. They very quickly caved to pressure, both internal and external, and the Republican Party collectively decided to completely back Trump, not just in, like, say, the nomination. You can argue that they saw the polling numbers, they saw that Trump was popular, and they didn't want to go against the will of the American people. That is certainly an argument that you can make. But they backed him in such a way that they refused to speak out against anything he said or did that was even things that were factually incorrect or morally abhorrent. They made up the most inane defenses of his words and actions that were largely indefensible, to the point that it was insulting to everyone's intelligence. And they, following Trump's lead, did nothing, at least not publicly, to curtail the worst impulses of Trump and his supporters. So should we feel sorry for them for suffering this mess that they've largely created for themselves? No one wants anyone to get hurt, let's be very clear about that. But Bill Kristol, co-founder of The Bulwark, says that these threats of violence are no excuse for congresspeople to not do their jobs, to not serve as an adequate check against Trump's now almost completely unimpeded power. As someone who had received similar threatening messages from Trump supporters, Kristol said, "I never read the comments or notifications. Senators can probably get quite a bit of protection if they need it, so I'm a little less sympathetic." In other words, deal with it. This is the job that they signed up for, and we're not going to feel badly when the rest of us are suffering for their cowardice or for being bad at their jobs. And one last thing that I'll say, it's not even like the people who voted them into office wanted things to get to this point. Congress is receiving record numbers of phone calls and emails a day with people protesting against the actions of the Trump/Musk administration. Republican voters across the country are speaking out publicly on social media and in town hall meetings about their disappointment in the administration that they voted for. This is all very excessive, and Congress is as much to blame for the current state of our nation as either Donald Trump or Elon Musk.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them. And we're going to put very serious tariffs on Mexico and Canada, because Canada, they come through Canada too, and the drugs that are coming through are at record numbers. Look, I called them Governor Trudeau because they should be the 51st state, really. It would make a great state, and the people of Canada like it. They'd pay lower taxes. They have virtually no military. They have a very small military. They pay less than 1%. They're about the lowest payer in NATO. They're supposed to pay much more. They haven't been paying. They have a lot of problems, and I was with Wayne Gretzky. I said, Wayne, would you like to be the governor of Canada? I can't imagine anybody doing any better than Wayne. Wayne was not too interested, but I think he probably would have liked statehood. He's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. He's the great one. We call him the great one, right? He's a great hockey player.
What's the price tag?
Well, maybe no price tag. Look, we're going to have to see what happens, because Denmark, we need this for national security. We need Greenland very badly. You look at the Russian ships, the China ships, they're all over the place. They're, surrounding. Now, they have for a long time. That's a lane. But we need that for national security. So I don't know that Denmark has any right, title, and interest, and we're going to find that. But I can tell you, you saw the clips that were released. The people of Greenland would love to become a state of the United States of America. We were greeted with tremendous love and affection and respect. The people would like to be a part of the United States. Now, Denmark maybe doesn't like it, but then we can't be too happy with Denmark, and maybe things have to happen with respect to Denmark having to do with tariffs. It needs security for itself, but it also needs security very much for the world. The location really, you see the people and the ships sailing around, and they're not the right ships, and they're not the ships you want to know about. So we need security, and our country needs it, and the whole world needs it.
Yes.
You're so strategically located.
Yeah.
It's really imperative.
You are right.
You guys like that, right?
Donald Trump hasn't even been inaugurated yet, but he's already back to his regular scheduled programming of lying and complete BS.
This is a great nation. Trust me.
I know whereof I speak. I come from a nation that believed in fascist ideology for a while. Okay, and we certainly will not want to go into that again, but we are close to it. Because people want to simplify complex problems. The essence of fascism is to simplify complex problems and feed people who don't have time to read some bullshit.
Now, finally, I want to make a brief comment about the president-elect's press conference yesterday. Donald Trump throws out a lot of strange and rather random ideas on a regular basis. He did it yesterday when suggesting we rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Well, let me say this. I'd agree to working with Donald Trump on renaming the Gulf of Mexico only if he first agrees to work with us on an actual plan to lower costs for Americans. That's what the American people want us to focus on first, not on renaming bodies of water. Our priorities, our democratic priorities, are so much more closely aligned with the concerns of the American people than Donald Trump seemed to be. The incoming president knows he has a tall task ahead of him. He spent years on the campaign trail making outlandish promises he won't be able to keep. In fact, he's getting rich to do the opposite of what he's getting ready to do the opposite of what he promised by cutting tax cuts for the very, very wealthy. Donald Trump is in over his head. So he's doing what he always does in times like this, distract America with crazy ideas. Renaming the Gulf of Mexico may be a zany new idea, but it isn't going to help people save money at the grocery store. It's not going to make trips to the pharmacy more affordable. It's not going to help anyone find a good-paying job. Donald Trump says these things because it will get him attention and make him sound like a tough guy. If Donald Trump wants to rename an ocean to sound more patriotic, I'd say we'll help him on one condition and only on one condition. Let's come up with a real plan first, not a concept of a plan to lower prices for Americans. Let's do that first. Then Donald Trump can have his fun.
It's really difficult to put into words how unserious Donald Trump is and how unserious MAGA is, because no matter what he does, the base just changes the goalpost and follows him in that direction. A man who they claimed is anti-war, even though that never was true. Now this dude's just willy-nilly talking about invading Mexico and taking Greenland and taking the Panama Canal and making Canada the 51st state of America, even though none of those things are going to happen, although he could push towards it in some type of arbitrary way, which wouldn't be good for anybody. Oh, well, that's totally fine. You know, imperialism, yay, let's expand America. This man, in his first term, mind you, talked about nuke the hurricanes. We should inject bleach into our systems. And, of course, the way he completely bungled the COVID pandemic and did nothing other than give tax cuts, major tax cuts, to corporate America and the wealthiest people in the country, and he's set to do it again. But because he has no real plan, well, concepts of plans is what he has, as we all remember from that famous debate, he's just lobbing things out and seeing what sticks. So it's just going to be 4 years of Trump talking out of his ass, making empty promises, and making a fool out of each and every one of us.